The moment Richard Halston stomped on Marcus's black card and called him ghetto trash, he had 4 minutes left in his career, he just didn't know it yet. Because the homeless man standing in front of him wasn't there to shop. He was there to sign the papers that would make him Richard's new owner. Before we watch Richard's entire world collapse in real time, do me one favor, hit that subscribe button right now and comment the country you're watching from in the comment box. Because if this story gets you heated, you need to see what happens when karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. Now let's watch this unfold. Did you crawl out of a dumpster or a charity bin? Richard Halston's voice cut through the Halston and Whitmore flagship showroom like a blade designed to draw blood in public. He stood 3 inches from Marcus Elijah Cole's face, his manicured finger jabbing toward the frayed hole in Marcus's gray sweatshirt sleeve. The fabric hung loose, exposing a patch of dark skin underneath. Laughter erupted. Not polite chuckles. Full-throated, performative mockery that echoed off the Italian marble floors and 18-foot ceilings. Richard grabbed the sleeve between his thumb and forefinger like it carried a contagious disease, holding it up for the growing crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fashion emergency. Someone alert Goodwill, one of their donations escaped. 3 other sales associates in navy Tom Ford suits formed a semicircle around Marcus. Victoria Chen covered her mouth, shoulders shaking with laughter. Robert Ashford pulled out his phone, snapping a photo. Melissa Grant whispered loudly to a wealthy client in a fur stole, "This is what happens when you don't have security protocols." 3:47 p.m. glowed on the showroom's Patek Philippe wall clock. 13 minutes until the New York Stock Exchange closed. 13 minutes until the Halston and Whitmore acquisition window collapsed. Marcus's canvas work boots didn't move. His ripped jeans had holes in both knees, authentic wear, not the $800 designer distressing sold 3 floors up. The gray sweatshirt had a mustard stain near the collar. To everyone watching, he looked like he'd wandered in from a construction site or a homeless shelter. Have you ever stood in the center of a room you already own while people debate whether to throw you out? Marcus's hands stayed in his pockets. His expression remained neutral, almost serene, as Richard circled him like a predator showing dominance to the pack. "I have an appointment," Marcus said quietly, his baritone voice carrying authority that contradicted everything about his appearance. "With Daniel Whitmore." 3:45. Richard's laugh was surgical in its cruelty. "An appointment? Of course you do." He turned to the crowd, arms spread wide. "Everyone has an appointment these days. Last week, someone with an appointment tried to return a watch they clearly stole." Victoria stepped forward, her smile venomous. "Sir, Mr. Whitmore only meets with clients who've been pre-screened through our private acquisition office. Did you fill out the financial disclosure forms? The background check? The reference letters from existing luxury partners?" "I went through the executive channel," Marcus replied. "The executive channel," Robert repeated, his tone dripping with theatrical disbelief. He tapped his tablet screen. "I'm looking at today's executive calendar right now. 3:45 shows a meeting with a Mr. Cole from Cole Global Dynamics. Are you telling me that's you?" He looked Marcus up and down slowly, deliberately, his gaze lingering on every tear, every stain, every visual marker of perceived poverty. "That's me," Marcus confirmed. The laughter intensified. Melissa pointed at his sweatshirt. "Cole Global Dynamics. The tech conglomerate worth $4.3 billion. And you expect us to believe you're the founder?" She turned to a middle-aged couple browsing diamond cufflinks. "Can you imagine? Next, he'll tell us he invented the internet." Richard moved closer, lowering his voice to a stage whisper loud enough for everyone to hear. "Let me educate you about how places like this work. I've been in luxury retail for 12 years. I've served oil sheiks, Hollywood producers, hedge fund managers. I can read well from across a room. He gestured at Marcus's boots. Those tell me you work with your hands. Manual labor. Maybe construction, maybe warehouse work. His finger moved to the sweatshirt. That tells me you shop at discount outlets, if you're lucky. Probably Walmart clearance racks. His eyes traveled to Marcus's face. And that look in your eyes? That's the look of someone who's never owned anything expensive enough to require insurance. Victoria giggled behind her hand. Richard, you're terrible. Accurate, he corrected, preening under the attention. There's a reason Halston and Whitmore has maintained exclusivity for 47 years. We protect our clientele from, he paused, searching for the right word, disruptions. Marcus reached slowly into his worn canvas messenger bag. The movement made Robert tense, as if preparing to call security. But Marcus only pulled out his phone, an older iPhone model with a cracked screen protector. He opened his email, turned the screen toward Richard. From, Daniel Whitmore, CEO, Halston and Whitmore Holdings. To, Marcus Cole. Subject, Final Acquisition Meeting, December 24th, 3:45 p.m. Body, Marcus, everything is prepared for signature. The board has approved all terms. I'll have the contracts ready. This will change everything for HNW, Daniel. Richard barely glanced at it. Anyone with basic Photoshop skills can fake an email. You think this is my first time dealing with con artists? Behind them, near the leather seating area, a junior stylist named Naomi Brooks stood frozen. She'd been with the company for 8 months, long enough to recognize the executive calendar codes, short enough to still remember what it felt like to be judged by appearance. Her hand hovered over her iPad, where the real executive calendar confirmed, 3:45 p.m. M. Cole, private acquisition meeting, Daniel's office only. She started to step forward, mouth opening to speak. Don't, Victoria hissed at her. Richard knows what he's doing. Naomi hesitated. One word from her could stop this. Silence could cost her everything. But contradicting Richard Halston, the top-earning salesman and Daniel's nephew, would end her career before it began. Marcus slid his phone back into his bag. His fingers brushed against something else inside, a sleek tablet with an encrypted screen, the kind used for billion-dollar wire transfers. Next to it, a leather folder containing contracts already reviewed by 14 lawyers across 3 continents. I understand you're busy, Marcus said, his voice still measured, still calm. But Mr. Whitmore is expecting me. Richard leaned against the polished reception desk, checking his Rolex. I've got time. I've got all the time in the world to explain how reality works. He crossed his arms. This isn't a community center. This isn't a place where you can walk in off the street and demand things. This is a curated environment built on discretion, taste, and legacy. And judgment, Marcus added quietly. Damn right, judgment. Richard's smile was sharp. Good judgment. The kind that's kept this brand exclusive for half a century. The kind that recognizes when someone doesn't belong. 3:51 p.m. The elevator chimed. Every head in the showroom turned toward the sound. The polished brass doors slid open, revealing Daniel Whitmore himself, silver-haired, Brioni-suited, with a leather portfolio under one arm and a golden Mont Blanc pen in his breast pocket. His face was flushed, eyes scanning the crowd frantically. Where's Mr. Cole? He demanded, his voice urgent. Has Marcus Cole arrived yet? Richard's smile faltered for the first time. Marcus turned slowly toward the owner, one hand still in his pocket, the other lifting in a small, deliberate wave. I'm right here, Daniel, he said. I've been here for 6 minutes. Marcus had walked through the brass-framed entrance of Halston and Whitmore at exactly 3:41 p.m., 4 minutes early for his appointment with Daniel Whitmore. The flagship showroom stretched before him like a cathedral devoted to wealth, vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers refracting light into rainbows across white marble floors, display cases holding watches worth more than houses. He'd made it 7 steps inside before the whispers started. Is he lost? Does he know where he is? Someone should tell him the service entrance is around back. By step 12, Richard Halston had materialized from behind a display of Italian leather briefcases, his navy suit sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes had traveled from Marcus's scuffed canvas boots up to the hole in his sweatshirt sleeve with the slow deliberation of a judge passing sentence. "Sir," Richard had said, the word wrapped in condescension like a gift nobody wanted, "can I help you find your way out?" That's when the circle formed. Victoria Chen had approached from the left, her stilettos clicking against marble. Robert Ashford from the right, tablet in hand like a shield. Melissa Grant closed the gap from behind, completing the perimeter. For sales associates in matching Tom Ford suits, surrounding one man in torn denim and gray cotton. The geometry was deliberate. Theatrical. They positioned themselves close enough that Marcus could smell Victoria's perfume, something French and expensive, and see the gleam of Robert's cufflinks catching light. Close enough that every other person in the showroom could see what was happening. Close enough to make Marcus the centerpiece of their performance. "Look at this," Richard announced, grabbing Marcus's sleeve and holding it up like evidence in a trial. Actual holes. Not the designer kind you buy on Rodeo Drive for $800. Real, authentic poverty holes. Laughter rippled through the showroom. A woman in a mink coat paused her conversation to watch. A businessman lowered his phone. 2 younger clients near the watch displays pulled out their phones, not even pretending to be subtle about recording. Melissa pointed at the mustard stain near Marcus's collar. "Is that from today or last week?" More laughter. Robert circled around to Marcus's back, examining him like a specimen. "The jeans are at least 2 years old. Look at the fade pattern. These have been washed in a coin laundromat, not dry cleaned." Victoria clasped her hands together in mock sympathy. "Oh honey, did you think this was a thrift store? Were you confused?" They moved in synchronized cruelty, each building on the last joke, each trying to earn the biggest laugh from their growing audience. Richard appeared to be the ringleader, but they were all complicit, for pointing fingers, for sneering mouths, for sets of eyes that had already decided Marcus's worth based on the fabric covering his skin. Marcus stood in the center of their circle, hands in his pockets, expression unchanged. He didn't flinch when they laughed. Didn't respond when they pointed. Didn't move when Richard leaned close enough that Marcus could count the pores on his nose. "Your entertainment," Richard whispered, loud enough for the front row to hear. "That's all you are right now. Entertainment for people who actually matter." 3:44 p.m. 1 minute until his appointment. Richard stepped back from the circle, addressing the crowd like a professor delivering a lecture to particularly attentive students. He gestured toward Marcus with the same casual dismissiveness someone might use to point at a museum exhibit. "Let me explain something about luxury retail," Richard began, his voice carrying across the showroom. "It's not just about selling products. It's about maintaining an ecosystem. A carefully curated environment where certain standards must be upheld." He walked slowly around Marcus, his Italian leather shoes clicking with each deliberate step. When someone walks into Halston and Whitmore, they're not just entering a store. They're entering a world. A world with rules, with expectations, with standards that have been refined over 47 years. Victoria nodded enthusiastically. "The brand is everything." "Exactly." Richard stopped in front of Marcus again, his finger hovering near the frayed hole in the sweatshirt sleeve. "This hole right here. This isn't just damaged clothing. It's a violation of everything this space represents. It's chaos infiltrating order. It's poverty attempting to exist in the same air as prosperity. Robert pulled up something on his tablet, showing it to a nearby couple. We had a client last month, Saudi prince, who spent 40 minutes in our private viewing room before making a purchase. Know why? Because the environment was perfect. No distractions. No disruptions. No visual pollution. Visual pollution, Richard repeated, savoring the phrase. That's exactly what this is. He pointed at Marcus's entire outfit now, a sweeping gesture that encompassed the boots, the jeans, the sweatshirt, the messenger bag. Every single element of this appearance broadcasts a message. And that message is, I don't belong here. Melissa joined in, her voice pitched to Carrie. In high society, your clothing is your resume. It's your credentials. It's how you prove you deserve to occupy premium space. And what does this outfit prove? Richard asked the crowd, then answered his own question. It proves he takes the bus. It proves he shops at discount stores. It proves he's never been to a place like this except maybe to mop the floors or take out the garbage. A man in a cashmere overcoat laughed, nudging his companion. Richard warmed to his theme, encouraged by the audience response. I can tell you his entire life story from these clothes. He works manual labor, construction, maybe warehouse loading. He lives in a neighborhood where iron bars cover the windows. He probably shares a studio apartment with 2 or 3 other people. His credit score is subterranean. He's never owned property, never had a passport, never experienced anything beyond a 50-mile radius of wherever he was born. Marcus's face remained impassive, but his right hand shifted slightly in his pocket, fingers brushing against his phone. On the screen, a notification waited, wire transfer authorization ready. $1.2 billion pending final approval. The truly invisible people in high society, Richard continued, now fully performing, aren't the ones we don't see. They're the ones we see and immediately dismiss. They're so far below our economic stratum that they become background noise. Scenery. Non-entities. He leaned closer to Marcus. That's what you are right now. Invisible. That hole in your sleeve might as well be a hole in reality itself, because to everyone here, you don't actually exist. 3:46 p.m. Naomi Brooks had been gripping her iPad so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She stood near the leather consultation area, 20 feet from the circle of cruelty, close enough to hear every word but far enough to maintain plausible deniability. The executive calendar still glowed on her screen, M. Cole, private acquisition meeting, 3:45 p.m. She'd refreshed it twice. The appointment hadn't changed. This wasn't some confused walk-in. This wasn't a scammer. This was Marcus Cole, and Richard was systematically destroying any chance of a successful acquisition meeting. Her 8 months at Halston and Whitmore had been carefully constructed survival. Keep your head down, don't contradict senior staff, let Richard and his circle run the floor while you handle the thankless tasks. Naomi had watched 3 other junior stylists get fired for far less than what she was considering doing right now. But she'd also watched her grandmother get dismissed from a department store 30 years ago for wearing the wrong shade of foundation, told she didn't represent the brand appropriately. She'd heard the story 100 times, how humiliation tastes like copper in your mouth, how silence from bystanders cuts deeper than the insult itself. Naomi set down her iPad. Her legs moved before her brain could construct all the reasons this was career suicide. She walked toward the circle, her modest heels clicking against marble that suddenly felt like a gangplank. Victoria noticed her first, eyes narrowing in warning. Robert's hand moved slightly, a gesture that clearly meant stay back. Naomi ignored them both. "Excuse me," she said, her voice smaller than she'd intended but steady. "Mr. Cole?" Richard turned, eyebrows raised. "I'm sorry, did you just—" "Mr. Cole has an appointment," Naomi interrupted, stronger this time. "I can see it on the executive calendar. 3:45 with Mr. Whitmore." The laughter stopped. Richard's expression shifted from surprise to cold fury in the span of a heartbeat. "Naomi. Return to your station. Now." Instead, she moved closer to Marcus, pulling a bottle of San Pellegrino from the nearby refreshment cart, the sparkling water they only offered to their highest-tier clients. She unscrewed the cap, poured it into one of the crystal glasses reserved for private viewings, and extended it toward Marcus. "Would you like to have a seat while you wait, Mr. Cole?" She gestured toward the leather consultation chairs, the ones positioned to face the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Marcus's eyes met hers for the first time. Something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or gratitude, or simply the acknowledgement that in this room full of people, she was the only one treating him like a human being. "Thank you," he said quietly, accepting the glass. His fingers were steady, no tremor of anger or embarrassment. "Naomi." Richard's voice had gone deadly soft. "You have about 5 seconds to explain what you think you're doing." She turned to face him, her heart hammering against her ribs. "I'm greeting a client with a confirmed executive appointment. Standard protocol for Tier 1 acquisitions." "Tier 1? Melissa laughed. "Look at him." "I am looking at him," Naomi replied. "I'm looking at his confirmed appointment time. I'm looking at his name on Mr. Whitmore's private calendar. I'm looking at what we're supposed to be doing instead of," she gestured at the circle, "this." Victoria stepped forward. "You're 8 months in, Naomi." 8 months. Richard has been here for 12 years. Maybe trust that he knows what he's doing. "Does he?" Naomi asked. "Because from where I'm standing, we're humiliating someone Mr. Whitmore personally scheduled time with." Richard's jaw tightened, a muscle pulsing near his temple. The performance had been interrupted, his authority challenged in front of an audience that had been eating from his hand moments ago. He pulled his phone from his breast pocket with the deliberate slowness of someone making a decision they wanted everyone to witness. "You know what? You're absolutely right, Naomi." His smile was razor-thin. "We should handle this properly. Through the appropriate channels." He tapped his screen 3 times, then held the phone to his ear. "Security. This is Richard Halston on the main floor. We have a situation that requires immediate attention." He paused, his eyes locked on Marcus. "We have an individual who's entered the showroom under false pretenses, claiming to have an executive appointment he clearly doesn't have. He's refusing to leave and has now been offered refreshments by a confused junior employee, which is making the removal more complicated." Naomi's face went pale. "Richard, if you would just check with Mr. Whitmore." "I don't need to check anything." Richard covered the phone's microphone. "Daniel Whitmore doesn't meet with people who look like they've been sleeping behind dumpsters. Use your brain, Naomi. If this were a real acquisition meeting, there would be lawyers, assistants, advanced security sweeps. There would be calls from his office confirming arrival time. There would be a car service, not," he gestured at Marcus, "whatever transportation method delivered this to our doorstep. Into the phone, yes, still here. I need 2 officers to the main showroom. We'll need a discreet escort to the street exit. No, he hasn't been violent, but he's clearly unstable. Making claims about being Marcus Cole from Cole Global Dynamics." Richard laughed. "Yes, that Marcus Cole. I know, right? Apparently delusions of grandeur aren't covered by whatever free clinic he uses." Robert had positioned himself between Marcus and the elevator, blocking any potential escape route. Melissa moved to the entrance, her body language making it clear the exit wasn't an option either. Victoria kept her phone raised, recording everything, probably already composing the story she'd tell at dinner parties. Remember when that homeless man tried to scam his way into H&W? The other clients in the showroom had formed a loose secondary circle, smartphones out, witnessing what they probably thought was a necessary purging of someone who'd violated the space's sanctity. A woman whispered to her husband, "I'm glad they're taking security seriously here. You hear about these scams all the time." Marcus remained seated in the leather chair Naomi had offered, the crystal glass of San Pellegrino untouched on the side table next to him. His posture was relaxed, almost meditative. If the threat of security bothered him, nothing in his expression revealed it. 3:48 p.m. The elevator chimed. Wrong elevator, not the main one Daniel would use, but the service elevator from the security office in the basement. Two guards emerged, both with the thick-necked build of former college football players. They wore black suits with discreet H&W security pins on their lapels and earpieces that curled behind their ears. "That's him," Richard announced, pointing at Marcus like a prosecutor identifying a defendant. "I need him escorted off the premises immediately. If he resists, we'll pursue trespassing charges." The lead guard, a man whose nameplate read, Stevens, approached Marcus with the cautious gait of someone trained to expect violence. "Sir, I'm going to need you to stand up and come with us." Marcus didn't move. "I have an appointment with Daniel Whitmore." 3:45. "Sir, we can do this the easy way or the hard way." "Check the executive calendar," Marcus said calmly. M. Cole. Private acquisition meeting. Stevens glanced at Richard, who shook his head. "He's been saying that for 10 minutes. It's a fantasy. Daniel doesn't have any appointments this afternoon." "Actually," Naomi interjected, her voice shaking but determined, "he does. I can show you on my—" "Naomi, you're fired," Richard said flatly. "Effective immediately. Security, please escort both of them out. She's clearly been compromised or is part of whatever scam this is." The showroom went silent except for the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Even the music felt obscene now, a soundtrack to cruelty. Stevens reached for Marcus's arm. That's when the main elevator chimed. The polished brass doors with the H&W monogram slid open with the whisper-quiet mechanics of German engineering. Daniel Whitmore burst into the showroom like a man who'd just run up 6 flights of stairs, though the elevator had brought him from his 10th-floor office. His silver hair was slightly disheveled. His Brioni suit jacket was unbuttoned. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the showroom's perfect climate control. His eyes scanned the crowd with wild urgency, passing over the clients, over his sales staff, over the security guards, until they landed on the man seated in the leather consultation chair with a hole in his sweatshirt and calm in his eyes. "Marcus." Daniel's voice cracked with relief and horror. "Oh God, Marcus, I'm so sorry, I was on a call with Singapore, I lost track of time." He rushed forward, hand extended, his face a mask of desperate apology. Every person in the showroom froze. Stevens's hand hovered 6 inches from Marcus's shoulder, suddenly afraid to complete the motion. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Victoria's phone slipped slightly in her grip. Marcus stood slowly, gracefully, like a man who'd been waiting patiently for an expected guest. He accepted Daniel's handshake with the ease of someone accustomed to deference. "No apology necessary, Daniel," Marcus said. "I arrived a few minutes early. Your staff has been very attentive." "Hold on, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing?" We're literally at the part where everything Richard thought he knew is about to shatter. Drop a like if you're feeling this justice, comment below what you would have done in Marcus's position, and subscribe because the revenge we're about to witness. Chef's kiss. Now back to the complete destruction of Richard's career. Daniel Whitmore's eyes swept across the scene before him with the rapid assessment of a man whose 47-year career in luxury retail had trained him to read rooms the way meteorologists read storm systems. He registered the circle formation of his senior sales staff. The two security guards positioned like they were about to make an arrest. Naomi Brooks standing alone, pale-faced, clearly in some kind of trouble. The crowd of clients with phones raised, documenting something. And Marcus Cole, the man who was about to wire $1.2 billion into Halston and Whitmore Holdings account, sitting in a consultation chair like a defendant awaiting sentencing. What? Daniel's voice faltered. He turned to Richard. What is happening here? Richard's confidence had evaporated, but years of sales experience provided enough muscle memory to attempt recovery. Mr. Whitmore, I apologize for the confusion. This gentleman arrived without proper identification, dressed in a way that seemed inconsistent with our typical executive clientele, and we were following standard security protocols too. Standard security protocols, Daniel repeated, his voice dropping to a register his staff had learned to fear over the decades. It was the tone that preceded firings, the voice that came before lawsuits, the sound of a man calculating exactly how much damage had just been done to his life's work. He looked at Marcus, then at the security guards. You called security on Marcus Cole. You called security on the man who is about to acquire 70% of this company's parent holdings. The showroom's ambient sound seemed to drain away, leaving only the terrible silence of realized catastrophe. Stevens, the security guard, stepped back from Marcus like he'd just discovered he'd been reaching for a live grenade. Sir, we were told. Get out, Daniel said quietly. Both of you. Go back to your office. We'll discuss your continued employment later. The guards retreated to the service elevator like men escaping a burning building. Daniel turned to Marcus, his hands clasped together in a gesture that looked almost like prayer. Marcus, I cannot possibly express how horrified I am. This is inexcusable. He seemed to search for words adequate to the moment and found none. This is the exact opposite of everything I promised you this merger would represent. Marcus pulled his canvas messenger bag onto his lap, unzipping it with calm, unhurried movements. I think, he said slowly, that this has actually been remarkably educational. Educational? Daniel's face had gone from flushed to ashen. I wanted to see the culture, Marcus continued. Not the culture you show to clients you know are important. The culture you show to people you think don't matter. He pulled out the sleek tablet, its encrypted screen glowing to life with a fingerprint touch. Then the leather portfolio containing contracts that represented 6 months of negotiation, due diligence, and financial restructuring. Finally, he retrieved his other American Express Centurion card, the backup one he'd kept in the bag's interior pocket while Richard had been stomping on its twin. Daniel recognized the card immediately. Only the top fraction of 1% carried them. You couldn't apply for a Centurion card. American Express invited you, usually after you'd spent multiple millions on their platforms. The meeting was scheduled for 3:45, Marcus said, checking his cracked phone screen. It's now 3:51. We have 9 minutes until the stock market closes and our acquisition window becomes complicated. Of course, Daniel said hastily. My office. Immediately. I have the contracts ready for signature. The board has approved everything. Actually, Marcus replied, setting the tablet on his lap, I think we should handle this right here. Daniel blinked. Here. In the showroom? Right here. Marcus's eyes moved to Richard, who stood frozen in his Tom Ford suit like a man watching his own execution. In front of everyone. I think transparency is important, don't you? Richard's face had taken on a waxy quality. Victoria had lowered her phone. Robert's tablet hung loose in his grip. Melissa had pressed herself against a display case as if trying to disappear into the Italian marble. Daniel swallowed hard. "Whatever you prefer, Marcus." "I prefer," Marcus said, standing and stretching slightly, "to sign the contracts right here on the main floor. I think it's important that everyone present understands exactly what's happening. That way there's no confusion later." He opened the leather portfolio, removing the acquisition documents that would transfer operational control of Halston and Whitmore Holdings to Cole Global Dynamics. 47 pages of legal language that boiled down to one essential truth: Marcus Cole was about to own everything Richard Halston had just used as a weapon. "Daniel," Marcus said conversationally, "do you have that Mont Blanc on you? The gold one?" "Yes, of course." Daniel fumbled in his breast pocket, producing the fountain pen like a penitent offering a relic. "Perfect." Marcus turned to Richard. "Come here." Richard's feet moved before his brain could process the command. Years of conditioning to obey authority, to defer to power, to recognize when the hierarchy had shifted so dramatically that resistance was futile. "Turn around," Marcus instructed. What? "Turn around. Back toward me." Richard complied, his movements mechanical, his expression that of a man in shock. Marcus placed the contract documents against Richard's back, using his Tom Ford jacket as a surface. He clicked the Mont Blanc pen once, the sound sharp in the silent showroom. "This feels appropriate somehow," Marcus said to no one in particular. Then he bent slightly, signing each page of the acquisition contract using Richard Halston's back as his desk, the back that had been so straight, so proud, so untouchable just minutes ago. The Mont Blanc scratched across each signature line with the sound of permanence, of decisions that couldn't be undone. Marcus signed 12 pages total, each one requiring his full legal name, Marcus Elijah Cole. The pen pressed through paper into the expensive fabric of Richard's suit jacket, probably leaving faint indentations in the wool that no dry cleaner would ever fully remove. Richard stood rigid, barely breathing. His position forced him to face the crowd, the clients, the staff, the witnesses who'd been laughing minutes earlier. Now they watched in silence as the geometry of power rearranged itself in real time. The man they'd mocked was signing documents on the back of the man who'd orchestrated the mockery. "The symbolism isn't lost on me," Marcus said, flipping to page 7. "Using you as furniture. Reducing you to a surface, a thing, an object that exists only to serve my purpose." He signed again. "I imagine that's roughly how you've made people feel for the past 12 years. Daniel Whitmore stood 3 feet away, his own copy of the contracts clutched in his hands, his face a portrait of a man watching his legacy teeter on a knife's edge. He'd built Halston and Whitmore into an empire of exclusivity, and now that exclusivity had turned into a weapon aimed at the one person who could save it from financial collapse. Marcus finished the final signature and straightened. "You can move now," he told Richard. Richard stepped forward shakily, his back still toward Marcus, unwilling or unable to turn and face the man he'd just been reduced to serving as a writing desk. Marcus handed the contracts to Daniel, who accepted them like they were made of nitroglycerin. "The wire transfer," Marcus said, pulling up his tablet screen. "Let's complete that now as well." His fingers moved across the encrypted interface, navigating through security protocols that required biometric verification, two-factor authentication, and finally a personal authorization code. The screen displayed the transfer details. Amount, $1,200,000,000. From Cole Global Dynamics Holdings LLC. To Halston and Whitmore Parent Corporation. Purpose, majority stake acquisition, 70% controlling interest. Authorization, Marcus E. Cole, Chairman and Founder. "Before I press confirm," Marcus said, his thumb hovering over the screen, I want to make sure we're all clear on what this means." He looked around the showroom, making eye contact with each person in turn. The elderly couple who'd whispered behind jeweled hands. The businessman who'd paused his phone call to watch. Victoria, Robert, Melissa, all of Richard's circle. The clients who'd pulled out their phones to record what they thought was going to be a spectacle of justified exclusion. As of this moment, Marcus continued, "I will own 70% of Halston and Whitmore Holdings. Daniel will retain 30% and continue as operational CEO, reporting to me as chairman. Every employee, every contract, every commission structure, every performance review, every hiring and firing decision, all of it flows through authority I now control." He let that sink in. The laughter I heard when I walked in here. I own that now. The pointing fingers. I own those too. The sneers, the jokes about dumpsters and charity bins, the assessment of my clothes and my shoes and my presumed poverty, I own every single word that was spoken in the last 15 minutes. Melissa had gone pale enough that her foundation looked like stage makeup. Robert's hand shook slightly around his tablet. Victoria had backed up until she was pressed against a display case. Richard finally turned around. His face had taken on a gray quality, like old concrete. "I recorded everything," Marcus said, pulling a small device from his sweatshirt pocket. It was smaller than a car key fob, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. "This is a professional lapel mic with 16 hours of memory. I activated it in the parking lot before I walked in." He tapped the device, and Richard's voice filled the showroom, tinny but clear from the small speaker. "Did you crawl out of a dumpster or a charity bin?" The recording continued. Every word. Every laugh. Every cruel observation about poverty and buses and Walmart and manual labor. Richard's voice explaining how clothing was a resume, how holes in fabric made people invisible, how Marcus didn't actually exist in the eyes of high society. The clients who'd been watching began to shift uncomfortably. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was evidence. This was the kind of recording that ended up on social media, in lawsuits, in HR investigations. Marcus stopped the playback. "I have 15 minutes and 32 seconds of audio. Crystal clear. Time-stamped. Admissible in any legal proceeding." He pressed his thumb against the tablet screen. "Transfer status, processing. Verification, complete. Authorization, approved. Status, funds transferred. 3:54 p.m. "It's done," Marcus said quietly. "As of this moment, I am the majority owner of Halston and Whitmore Holdings and all subsidiary brands, properties, and contracts." Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with trembling hands, checked the screen, and nodded. "My bank just confirmed receipt. The funds have cleared." Marcus turned to Naomi Brooks, who'd been standing silently near the leather chairs, probably wondering if she was about to be destroyed along with everyone else. "You offered me water," Marcus said to her. "You risked your job to treat me with basic human dignity. What's your full name?" "Naomi Brooks," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Junior stylist. 8 months with the company." "Not anymore," Marcus said. Naomi's face crumpled. "As of now," Marcus continued, "you're director of client experience. Salary of $140,000, plus full benefits and profit sharing. You'll report directly to Daniel and you'll be responsible for rewriting every customer service protocol in this company." The crumpling transformed into shock. What? "Someone in this room understood that dignity isn't determined by clothing," Marcus said. "That person should be making decisions about how clients are treated." He turned back to Richard. "Now," Marcus said, his voice dropping to something colder, "let's talk about your future." "Wait," Are you watching this without being subscribed? The algorithm is testing me right now. If you're invested in this story, if you want to see more moments where the humble win and the arrogant fall, click that subscribe button. Drop a like if watching Marcus sign contracts on Richard's back gave you chills. Now let's see what happens when 15 minutes of cruelty gets played back word for word. Marcus walked slowly toward Richard, closing the distance between them until he stood in the same intimate space where Richard had performed his lecture about luxury retail ecosystems. The sales floor's ambient lighting cast shadows that made the moment feel like a stage play in its final act. 15 minutes and 32 seconds, Marcus repeated, holding up the recording device. Let's review what we have, shall we? He tapped the device, scrolling through the audio file's timeline. At timestamp 014, you asked if I'd crawled out of a dumpster or charity bin. That's our opening. Strong start, very memorable. Richard's jaw worked soundlessly. At 1 minute 8 seconds, you grabbed my sleeve and held it up for the crowd. You said, "Someone alert Goodwill, one of their donations escaped." I thought that was particularly creative. The crowd loved it. Marcus scrolled further. 2 minutes 41 seconds, visual pollution. You called my appearance visual pollution. You explained to everyone present that I was chaos infiltrating order and poverty attempting to exist in the same air as prosperity. He looked up from the device. Do you remember saying that, Richard? I was. Richard's voice cracked. I was doing my job. Protecting the brand. Protecting the brand, Marcus echoed. Let's continue then. For minutes 12 seconds, you told the crowd you could tell my entire life story from my clothes. Construction worker or warehouse loader. Studio apartment shared with 3 people. Subterranean credit score. Never owned property, never had a passport, never experienced anything beyond a 50-mile radius of where I was born. He paused the playback. That was detailed. Almost literary in its specificity. Where did those details come from, Richard? I was making a point about. You were creating a character, Marcus interrupted. A fiction. A story about who you decided I was based on nothing but the fact that I wore torn clothing into your showroom. You wrote an entire poverty narrative and performed it for an audience. He resumed scrolling. 6 minutes 37 seconds, the truly invisible people in high society aren't the ones we don't see. They're the ones we see and immediately dismiss. You said I was background noise, scenery, a non-entity. You said that hole in my sleeve made me invisible because I existed so far below your economic stratum. Marcus looked around the showroom, addressing the watching crowd now. I want everyone to understand something. These weren't slip-ups. This wasn't a bad day or a moment of poor judgment. This was systematic. This was practiced. This was a philosophy of exclusion that had been refined over years. He turned back to Richard. 8 minutes 22 seconds, you called security. You told them I was making claims about being Marcus Cole and described it as delusions of grandeur. You laughed. The security guard laughed with you. You made a joke about free clinics. I didn't know, Richard started. You didn't want to know, Marcus cut him off. Naomi Brooks told you I had a confirmed executive appointment. She showed you the calendar. You fired her on the spot for contradicting you. That's at 13 minutes 9 seconds, by the way. Naomi, you're fired. Effective immediately. Your exact words. Naomi, standing near her new position as Director of Client Experience, watched with an expression caught between vindication and horror. Marcus held up the recording device. This audio file will be transcribed, time-stamped, and attached to your permanent employment record. It will be included in any reference checks. It will be part of any background investigation if you try to work in luxury retail again. He pocketed the device. But I'm not going to fire you right now, Richard. Hope flickered across Richard's face. I'm going to keep you on staff for exactly 30 days, Marcus continued. During that time, you're going to participate in what we're calling the Humanity Reset program. You'll spend 1 week working in each of our service departments, shipping, receiving, janitorial, and facilities maintenance. You'll learn the names of every person who makes this showroom function. You'll understand what it feels like to be treated as invisible labor. Richard's hope died as quickly as it had appeared. After 30 days, you'll write a detailed report on what you learned about dignity, respect, and the difference between serving wealth and worshipping it. If that report meets standards set by Naomi Brooks and our new HR director, you'll be offered a position as a junior sales associate with no commission structure. Base salary only. You'll rebuild your career from the ground up, the same way every person you've looked down on has had to build theirs. And if I refuse? Richard asked, finding his voice for the first time. Then you're fired immediately, with cause, and the audio recording becomes part of a lawsuit for hostile work environment and discrimination. Your name will be attached to every article written about reforming luxury retail's exclusionary practices. You'll become a case study in exactly what not to do. Marcus pulled out his tablet again. But Richard, you're not the only one who needs to understand how this new company works. He turned to Victoria, Robert, and Melissa, the circle that had formed around him, the chorus that had amplified Richard's cruelty. Victoria Chen, Marcus said, reading from a file on his screen. You said, does he know where he is, at timestamp 0 minutes 9 seconds. You called my appointment claim garbage at 4 minutes 18 seconds. You recorded the entire incident on your phone, presumably to share as entertainment later. Victoria's phone fell from her shaking hands, clattering against the marble. Robert Ashford. You blocked the elevator exit. You explained to clients that my clothes had been washed in a coin laundromat, not dry cleaned, as if that was evidence of moral failing. You pulled up your tablet to show a couple how visual pollution disrupts the purchasing environment. Robert's face had gone gray. Melissa Grant. You made jokes about mops and disease. You told a client that my clothes probably have diseases on them. That's timestamp 2 minutes 44 seconds. Marcus closed the tablet. All three of you will participate in the same 30-day Humanity Reset program. All three of you will write the same report. All three of you will have the same choice, rebuild your understanding of what service means, or find employment elsewhere with this incident as part of your permanent record. He looked at Daniel Whitmore, who'd been standing silently through this entire audit, his face reflecting the understanding that his 47-year legacy was being fundamentally restructured in real time. Daniel, I need you to close the showroom. Effective immediately. Daniel Whitmore's hand moved to his phone, then hesitated. Close the showroom? Marcus, we have clients here, we have appointments scheduled, we have a culture that needs to be rebuilt from scratch, Marcus interrupted. And we can't do that while pretending it's business as usual. He gestured to the crowd of clients still frozen in various states of discomfort, their phones out, their faces reflecting the understanding that they'd witnessed something that would follow this brand for years. Everyone here saw what happened. Every person who walked into Halston and Whitmore today became part of a story about exclusion and cruelty. Is that the story you want associated with your company? Daniel's shoulders sagged. He pulled out his phone and began typing rapidly. Within seconds, every employee's device chimed simultaneously with an emergency notification. From Daniel Whitmore, CEO. TO, all HNW staff. Subject, immediate closure. Effective 4 p.m. today, all Halston and Whitmore locations are closed for mandatory culture restructuring. All clients will be contacted to reschedule appointments. All staff will receive full pay during the closure period. Further details to follow. The timestamp on the message read 3:58 p.m. Marcus turned to address the client still lingering in the showroom. I apologize for the disruption to your shopping experience. If any of you had scheduled appointments or intended purchases, please speak with our staff at the door. We'll ensure you're taken care of, and will provide a significant discount on any future purchases as an apology for what you witnessed today. A few clients moved toward the exit quickly, clearly wanting no part of whatever corporate restructuring was about to unfold. Others lingered, still recording, still documenting, probably already composing social media posts about the most dramatic retail incident they'd ever witnessed. Marcus walked to the center of the showroom, to the exact spot where he'd stood surrounded by pointing fingers 15 minutes earlier. Richard, Victoria, Robert, Melissa, stay here. Everyone else who wasn't directly involved in what happened, you can go home. Full pay for today. We'll contact you within 72 hours about next steps. The remaining staff members, the ones who'd watched but not participated, who'd been uncomfortable but silent, fled toward the service elevator like prisoners granted unexpected parole. Within 3 minutes, the showroom had emptied except for Marcus, Daniel, Naomi, and the 4 members of Richard's circle of scorn. The crystal chandeliers still glittered. The Italian marble still gleamed. The display cases still held watches and briefcases worth more than most people's annual salaries. But the space felt different now, stripped of its audience, exposed as what it really was, a stage where cruelty had been performed for entertainment. Here's what happens next, Marcus said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. Tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., we begin mandatory training for every single Halston and Whitmore employee. We're bringing in consultants who specialize in dignity-based customer service, implicit bias training, and restorative justice practices. Richard's expression suggested he'd rather face public execution. The training will last 2 weeks, Marcus continued. It will be intensive. It will be uncomfortable. You'll be required to examine your own assumptions about class, about appearance, about who deserves respect and who doesn't. You'll hear from people who've been treated the way I was treated today. You'll learn what it costs people emotionally, professionally, financially. He pulled out his tablet, scrolling to a document. I'm also restructuring the commission system. Effective immediately, sales commissions will no longer be based solely on transaction value. 50% of your commission will be determined by client satisfaction scores. Every customer, regardless of what they're wearing, regardless of how much they spend, will receive a follow-up survey. If your dignity scores fall below acceptable standards, your commissions suffer. Victoria made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. Additionally, Marcus said, we're implementing a new policy called dignity audits. Once per quarter, I or someone from my team will enter a Halston and Whitmore location dressed in a way that tests your assumptions. We'll be in torn jeans, in discount clothing, in outfits that don't match your expectations of wealth. And we'll be watching how you treat us. Robert found his voice. That's entrapment. No, Marcus replied calmly. That's accountability. Entrapment would be encouraging you to discriminate. This is simply creating consequences for discrimination you're already inclined to practice. He looked at each of them in turn. You have a choice to make. You can participate in this restructuring, embrace the discomfort of growth, and learn to build a career based on service rather than exclusion. Or you can leave now with a severance package and a reference that honestly describes your skills while noting that you weren't a cultural fit for the new direction. Silence filled the showroom. I need your decisions by tomorrow morning, Marcus said. If you're staying, be here at 8 a.m. sharp for orientation. If you're leaving, email your resignation to Daniel by midnight tonight. He turned to Daniel. I need a list of every client who was in this showroom today. I want personal calls made to each of them. Not marketing calls. Real conversations where we acknowledge what they witnessed, apologize for it, and explain what we're doing to ensure it never happens again. Daniel nodded, typing notes into his phone. I also need, Marcus continued, a complete audit of our hiring practices, our training materials, and our employee handbook. Anything that explicitly or implicitly encourages the kind of behavior we saw today gets eliminated. We rebuild those systems from the ground up. Naomi Brooks, still looking slightly shocked at her sudden promotion, raised her hand tentatively. Mr. Cole, what about the clients who weren't here today? The ones who've been shopping here for years and expect a certain atmosphere. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd shown since entering the building. That's exactly the right question, Naomi. And here's the answer, luxury shouldn't require cruelty. Exclusivity shouldn't require exclusion. It's possible to maintain high standards of quality, craftsmanship, and service without making people feel worthless. He gestured to the displays around them. These watches, these briefcases, these products, they're excellent because of the materials and the artistry, not because of who we refuse to sell them to. Our job is to match excellent products with people who'll appreciate them. Our job is not to perform class warfare disguised as customer service. For 11 p.m. The digital clock on the wall marked the passage of time in a showroom that would never be the same. One more thing, Marcus said, pulling a folder from his messenger bag. I'm establishing a new foundation under the Halston and Whitmore umbrella. It's called the Second Chances Initiative. We'll partner with job training programs, homeless services, and re-entry programs for formerly incarcerated people. We'll provide professional clothing, interview training, and direct job placement for people who've been excluded from opportunities because of how they look or where they come from. He handed the folder to Daniel. I've already allocated $5 million to the foundation. I want the first cohort of participants to start next month. Richard's face had taken on a hollow quality, as if he was watching everything he'd built his identity around crumble in real time. You all can go now, Marcus said to the 4 members of the circle. Think carefully about your decisions. Tomorrow morning will define the rest of your careers. They left slowly, like mourners leaving a funeral, which, in a way, they were. The version of Halston and Whitmore they'd known, the culture they'd thrived in, the system that had rewarded their cruelty with commissions and status, all of it had died in the span of 30 minutes. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in front of the Halston and Whitmore flagship showroom at 9:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. Above the brass-framed entrance, where the original HNW monogram had hung for 47 years, a new plaque gleamed in the morning light. Halston and Whitmore. EST 1978. Dignity first. Excellence always. Rebuilt 2025. Naomi Brooks emerged from the entrance, tablet in hand, wearing a professional charcoal suit tailored for her new role as Director of Client Experience. Morning, Marcus. We've got the numbers from the first 2 weeks of reopening. Marcus scrolled through the data. Client satisfaction scores had jumped 18%. Sales had increased by 12%. Turns out that when people felt respected, they spent more time in the store, trusted recommendations more, and became repeat customers. Richard's 30-day report is due tomorrow, Naomi noted. I think he's actually learning something. Marcus had watched Richard's journey through the Humanity Reset program with clinical interest. 3 weeks of shipping departments, facilities maintenance, and janitorial work had broken something fundamental in his worldview. He'd stopped filing complaints and started asking questions about the lives of people he'd never noticed before. The first dignity audit? Marcus asked. Passed perfectly, Naomi smiled. Our consultant dressed in paint-stained coveralls. He was greeted within 30 seconds, offered refreshments, treated with complete respect. A young man in a frayed hoodie approached the entrance, hesitating at the door. Through the window, Emily Santos spotted him and opened the door immediately. "Good morning. Welcome to Halston and Whitmore. I'm Emily. What brings you in today?" "I just got my first real job," the young man said. "I need a professional bag and a watch." "Congratulations," Emily replied warmly. "Let's find you something perfect. No pressure, no judgment." She guided him inside with genuine respect, treating him as she would anyone else. Marcus felt something ease in his chest, a tension he'd carried since his father told him stories about being humiliated in stores exactly like this one, decades ago. His father, who'd worked 3 jobs, who'd been thrown out of a luxury dealership 3 days before he died, told that people like him should know better than to dream. This was for him. The plaque, the restructuring, all of it. Marcus touched the engraved letters one final time. Dignity first. Excellence always. Not just words on platinum. A promise kept to a father who'd never lived to see it fulfilled. A commitment to every person who'd ever been judged by tears in their clothing instead of the content of their character. A rebuilding of what luxury could mean when divorced from cruelty. The way it should have always been. The way it would be from now on. Never judge a book by its cover. If this story proves anything, it's that. Subscribe for more stories where karma doesn't just visit, it moves in permanently. Like if you're Team Marcus, comment if you've got your own judged by appearance story, and share this so Richard types everywhere get the message. Dignity first. Always.